This is the 2006 reboot of Sonic the Hedgehog, known colloquially as Sonic 06. It is infamous for being one of the highest-profile gaming disasters, a game too ambitious to be rushed out the door as it was, well before it was ready to meet unreasonable deadlines. In years since, it has become the butt of jokes, a symbol of the series' lowest point, and even one of the worst games of all time. I want you to keep that in mind when I read this excerpt. Sonic the Hedgehog literally has everything. Platforming, some of it amid situations you simply will not believe. High-speed chases, close-quarters combat, multiple vehicles, flying, speed zones, character customization, real-time cinemas, skillfully acted, this is Sega's best localization to date, beautiful CG, telekinesis, RPG elements, open-world exploration, rail grinding, rampant diversity, epic bosses, a fantastic soundtrack, a beautiful princess to save, you actually spent a level carrying her, and next-gen visuals that will make you happy to be alive. You simply can't ask for more out of an action game. Mission accomplished. Sonic is born anew. 9.5. Now, if I told you that this was a review published in a nationally syndicated gaming magazine in 2006, would you believe me? What if I told you it was written by none other than Dave Halverson? After the latter half of Gamers Republic, Dave's third foray into print magazine would come in the form of Play Magazine. No, that's the UK Play Magazine. This is Play Magazine, the US version. Would you believe this company is a pain in the ass to Google?
The Last Stand.
The first issue premiered December 2001, only a few months after GR's closure. Dave really hit the ground running. Maybe he had things lined up before Millennium went under? This new magazine would be under Fusion Publishing, a company I cannot find any info about, other than the fact that they published Play and another book called Geek Monthly. Fusion is a really generic name for a publisher, and they've either been wiped from existence or absorbed into something else. I don't know if the company was founded or run by Dave, but it doesn't look like it, as he apparently had little control over the business end of the company. Rather, he claims his role was 100% creative. This was not going to be like Gamers Republic. This was more like GameFan, like the old days. It was the closest magazine to ever get to a GameFan revival in my mind, at least when looking at the mix of staff plus coverage. It had Dave, Nick, Casey, Mike Hobb, Substance D, and myself. Gamers Republic I kind of don't count because that was basically take half of the GameFan staff to a new mag, so it wasn't necessarily a revival. Plus, I remember it covering more of a broader base of popular games, whereas Play got back to having a heavier Japanese and niche gaming slant. It's true that Play stood out from its competition by embracing games no one else would ever think to give top billing. Just the third issue featured Gun Valkyrie on its front cover, an Xbox-exclusive third-person shooter from Sega. Halverson's letter in issue 1 states the intent of the magazine pretty clearly after discussing all the upcoming games of the season. Play doesn't stop there because neither do you. You'll notice that we have quite a bit of, for lack of a better term, lifestyle coverage. Believe it or not, there are a few things in life as intoxicating as video games. Yes, it's true. So by leaving some of the prosaic game filler on the cuting room floor, we offer editorial that fits that mold. Japanese anime, some of the edgier fare on TV and DVD, in gear and music, and anything else that sparks our interest. Much like GameFan, Play sought to deliver not just gaming news, but a cool underground club catering to nerdy subcultures of all kinds. In this same issue, only about half of the page count is about games. The rest is dedicated to anime, DVD releases, television, merchandise, and music. There's even an interview with Jonan Vasquez. Editorials had that familiar Halverson oddness. For instance, this one from issue 35. Hip-hop music is a beautiful thing. I love all the big butts and excess. Humvees rolling up full of girlies, and great people like Nelly and LL getting their message out there to kids that they can do whatever they aspire to. But do we really need so many games exploiting the hip-hop culture? No offense to all of the people out there who think it's cool, but if you're a white guy trying to get all fashizzle, you're just a poser. Following the editorial letter is the inked section, with all sorts of fun little bits, like the eBay Oddity of the Month, weird news stories, gaming history, and interviews with industry insiders, like this section on E.T. video games. When E.T. phoned home for the first time, Drew Barrymore didn't have breasts yet. Wait, who did Drew Barrymore play in E.T.? No! Who wrote that? Stylistically, Play more closely resembles the end of Gamers Republic. By its final two issues, GR had matured its Y2K aesthetic into a cleaner, more minimalist look. Play solidified this with slick, single-color backgrounds, usually white, black, or gray, flat color blocks, and Helvetica font. Maybe it's Helvetica. It looks like it. Font experts tell me in the comments. It was around this time that GameFan alumni started reconnecting on message boards and forums to catch up and share their stories. This reunion inspired Tim Lindquist to suggest a kind of comeback. You know, screw writing a book about what once was. We should put our effort instead into making something that is great once again, like making a new magazine in the spirit of GameFan. No stranger to starting magazines himself, he got together a pretty respectable team that included GameFan OGs like Greg Off and Terry Wolfinger, among others. This became Hardcore Gamer magazine, which ran its first issue in 2005. It appears that the seeds planted by GameFan were finally starting to blossom into a number of crops, while the original sower was finding success himself. Now, Dave has always written for his magazines, but most of the important stories concern him as a businessman and a manager. With him taking on a 100% creative role, we finally get to talk about his writing. In 2004, Dave launched a side project called Girls of Gaming, an annual magazine dedicated to female video game characters. And I am not going to talk about it, because I already made a video on it like a year ago. Yeah, that was my first introduction to Dave, and the inspiration for this whole series. Go check it out. It's a little rougher than my current stuff, but it's fun. Play is the era of Halverson's where I want to say he grew his infamy outside of the very enthusiastic part of gaming magazine readership. We were past the .com bubble, and forum culture was just starting to take root, meaning that you didn't even need any of his magazines to be published in your country to have heard of his colorful opinions. I know you're itching to hear more about it, so let's talk about that Sonic 06 review. Dave was well known and often mocked for his love of platformers and critters, as well as Play having an overall positive spin on many games. There had been disappointments in gaming before, instances of too much hype for a mediocre title or a company jumping the shark, especially in this era. Sonic 06 was different. In a world where patching was not yet the standard, most people at the time could not even fathom a mainline game in a series as well regarded as Sonic coming out so... It's just fucked. It's just fucked up. And in comes Play with a whopping 9.5 out of 10. This review is abysmal. There are 12 paragraphs. 4 of them actually discuss the game. The first 2/3, the bulk of the article, is just Dave talking about the history of the series and his personal opinions on it and individual people who worked at Sega and the E3 trailer of the game that made him cry. And then he gets to the game, and it's my least favorite kind of review because it's barely a review. It's just a summary of things that are in the game with vague, "it's good" language tacked on. There's more critique of Sonic 3D Blast in this review than the game it's about. It should be called Sonic Universe.
In its open world?
There is not a single mention of the bugs. Oh, wait, down here, at the bottom, in the pros and cons section. Pros, the best Sonic ever. Hands down, 2D or otherwise. Cons, still just a few little bugs, but ant-sized. You will be relieved to hear that in the very next issue, a retraction was made by Halverson, correcting the score from 9.5 to a much more fitting 8.5 because of load times. Within that second review is a little detail that he didn't mention the load times in his review because he was told by Sega that they were only in the build of the game he played, and wouldn't be in the final release. This raised some questions at the time about whether or not game journalists could be trusted. I mean, what's to stop publishers from just lying about what's going to be changed in the final build? It could also have just been Dave being Dave. Let's take a look at some other examples collected by Kevin Gifford of the now-defunct Game Set Watch. You want casual gaming? And you bought a Wii? Ah, take it back and do yourself a favor. Meet Eye of Judgment. Shelf life forever.
Now that's what I call a duck.
If this one doesn't launch a major franchise, then there's absolutely, positively, no justice in the world for Valhalla. If this doesn't float your boat, then you're living in a dinghy. a dingy? See that 80-foot motor yacht about to run you down? That's me. X-Blades certainly has all the requisite ingredients. There's the parallax mapping, high dynamic range lighting and rendering, radiosity lighting, radiance transfer lighting, indirect subsurface scattering shadow depth ambient shadows, volumetric lighting, motion blur, dynamic color image correction, animation blending, and one of the most epic asses ever. Portal is neat, I guess, if you're bored, but short. The only problem? We may never see Faith's beautiful face as it's been depicted on many a magazine cover. We also don't see much of her body. Her point of view begins below her chest, and so far, there are no in-game cutscenes. Then again, the game is called Mirror's Edge. It can't be long until she's standing in front of one. Is it too much to ask to enjoy my critter-based epics and various action/adventures without having to be reminded that the average on game rankings doesn't echo my enthusiasm? Tyrus is a beautiful heroine. So beautiful, in fact, that the absence of dynamic animation is all the more puzzling. Her distinctive walk and run, separate animations for every beast, and there really isn't anything more intoxicating than a beautiful half-naked woman riding bareback on a snarling beast, and superb battle movement make the flat stance on sloped surfaces and steps a real head-scratcher. Her boobs are motionless until you reach Fiend's path, too, after which they have subtle, natural animation, but I'm guessing that's due to the detail on her various tops. Some flies, eh? Darn limited boob animation? All of these quotes are from 1 year. These are just from 2008. That last one was for Golden Axe Beast Rider, a game Dave was just gaga for as a return to form for the true hardcore gamer. It wasn't received too well by most other publications, and most of them found it pretty generic, but to Dave, those people were shams. The majority of these people, can't call them critics, either didn't complete a fraction of the game, don't understand game design, or just plain suck at games. To score Beast Rider below a 7 is just irresponsible. These are not valid opinions of professional gamers. It's painfully obvious these people have at best grazed the surface of the overall game, which by action gaming standards is anything but short. Yeah, for all its wackiness, there really was nothing like it on the shelves, which made it all the more depressing for longtime fans when the magazine was squashed like a fly at the start of the next decade. I don't know where else to fit this in. So this is really confusing to me, and I don't know if this is totally correct, but there was also a separate, unrelated relaunch of DieHard GameFan, the brand, but as a website that happened in 2007. It has no involvement from Dave besides having his blessing to use the name. It's really weird, and I don't get it. Out of nowhere, without so much as an announcement in its pages, Play Magazine ceased publication in January 2010 when Fusion filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. That's the bad one! With Dave supposedly not handling finances, the reasons should point elsewhere. I mean, it's not actually too crazy to imagine things were getting rough even without him buying a 3-foot Sonic statue, which he did bring to the Play offices. Magazines were already going out of style, and in the wake of the 2007 and 8 recession, everyone was hurting. I mean, except the people who caused it, they were just fine, but common folk who made video game magazines were not. Were there shenanigans behind the scenes? Oh, yeah, definitely. Shidoshi left an extensive list of what was owed to the staff, and I don't think any of these people ever got what they deserved. Immediately following the closure of Play, however, was the suspiciously quick announcement of Halverson's next project, a revival of GameFan magazine. I'm talking February to April. According to Shidoshi, Dave had somehow built an escape plan into the company. Things were set up so that if Fusion got in trouble, Dave would be able to separate himself from it and start a new company. For the people who were working for him, however, they've basically been told, too bad, about all the money they were owed, and they were used until they would no longer put up with not being paid. Unlike the previous two sunk ships, we actually do have a statement from Dave on why the magazine shut down. Responding to an inquiry from VentureBeat, he said, "It was a culmination of things that ultimately took Fusion down. What was a terrible year ad-wise was made all the worse via Geek never finding its audience. A great mag, though. It was a big drain on the company, but a risk admin felt, I'm told, was worth taking considering the potential. It just got worse, though. This economy is like nothing we've ever seen. Shame they robbed Peter to pay Paul, though. Had I known, I would have done everything in my power to stop it, but my role was 100% creative. That said, I guess everything would still have been okay had Q4 panned out anywhere close to normal. But turns out it was a disaster. Over 60% of our advertisers decided to abandon print and go online exclusively. No matter how much we fought and could prove our readers choose print, they just slammed the door in our face like we were pond scum. It was a rude awakening after 18 years. There's too much turnover in the game biz, too many relationships come and go. Our best clients have always stood by us, or moreover, our readers. So once again, I've decided to tough it out and stay the course developing print, rather than joining the online community. When Play went, there was an outburst of love and appreciation for this oddball magazine. The blogger Sketz describes showing an issue to two of his friends, both veterans of the publishing industry. One of them was struck by the fact that in the editorial page it showed the previous issue as having lunar nights on the cover. No magazine would ever have given such a niche game cover time. And that, for me, epitomizes Play. They were an independent little guy, the scrappy junkyard dog of the magazine world, putting up the good fight for the little guy and championing what would otherwise be overlooked. They gave Odin Sphere cover time, with Halverson stating he did it to change things. They gave Castlevania on PSP cover time, where for the first time we received Chino Rondo in English. They gave Muramasa cover time, with a racy nod to one of Hokusai's prints, and then gave it 18 pages of editorial. I've never seen 18 pages for anything in any other magazine. The two authors who went to Japan spent time talking about obscure kabuki plays and even included a photo of the outside of the company's building. It could be the best article I've ever read. No one else gave so much attention to Muramasa. In that same issue, they gave detailed coverage to shmups, an otherwise dying genre. How many other mags would take the time to examine the genre across all formats, especially when you'd need a Japanese 360 to do them justice? Play tried to change the world, but no one listened. That blog post touches on something that's kind of been swept under the rug in recent years, and maybe a little uncomfortable to bring up, but I think it's also important. In the late 2000s into the 2010s, there was this weird surge in anti-Japanese sentiment in gaming discussion. Not full-blown racial hate or anything like that, but a lot of intellectuals of the gaming world just kind of decided that if a game came out of Japan, that it was bad. It was archaic and sloppy and unappealing to anyone but a shrinking audience. Like, there's this crazy video of Phil Fish at a GDC panel in 2012, only 2 years after Play shut down, where this guy who came all the way from Japan and really admires his work asks him what he thinks of Japanese games, and Fish replies,
"They suck." I'm sorry. Like, you guys need to get with the times and make better interfaces and like update your technology. We're totally kicking your ass. Back then, you guys are the king of the world, but your time has passed.
Everyone just laughs and laughs. No one talks about this, but it's like really shitty, the sentiment that is its own topic entirely, to be honest. And in that environment, Play had the balls to not only give crazy niche Japanese games front covers, but also pour pages and pages over them, some of which have gone on to become cult classics years after the release. And for that, I have to commend them. The new and improved GameFan magazine would hit store shelves around early 2010 and continued the tradition of spotlighting lesser-known titles with Blade Kitten, which you've never heard of.
Yeah, that first issue was crazy because the cover art was supposed to be No More Heroes. I actually done this cover for No More Heroes 2 for the 100th issue of Play magazine. It was already done.
Oh.
Approved. And then Dave said, we're going to move that to GameFan. That'll be our launch issue. And so we had a No More Heroes coverage in there. We had an interview with Grasshopper and all them.
Mm-hmm.
But when the issue was done, Dave said, the games, it's already out. We need a new game. We can't put an old game on the cover. I'm like, well, what are we putting on the cover? He's like, Blade Kitten.
Blade
and
Kitten,
I'm looking at it. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
look, Dave, I appreciate that you cover this. This is not good art.
You'll have to forgive me because scans of the latter half of Play were impossible to come by, and all I have of the new GameFan is covers, which is weird because there was a digital version available from their site. In any event, there were so few issues of new GameFan that I can literally go issue by issue. Issue 1, April 2010. The magazine releases with several key staff from Play on board, including illustrator Rob Duenas. It had this gimmick where the backside of the magazine was a different book called Movie Fan, and you flipped it upside down to read it?
But they had this thing on the back. Someone thought it'd be... Dave told me it was Matt's idea, but you can take Dave's opinion worth... You know what I mean? It's like Michael Scott. Like, that may be true. I don't know.
Yeah.
Someone decided to make GameFan a flipbook magazine.
Oh yes,
where
I remember
one side
that.
is GameFan and the other side is
movie fan.
And I was told
Yeah.
that I didn't have to worry about movie fan. I'm just
Oh.
making the GameFan part. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
But nobody had movie fan, anything. They didn't have pages. They didn't have a logo. They didn't know what it was going to look like. And so Dave said, "Can you just do something really basic, like just like play?" And I'm like, I guess I can. I'm like, "Where are the assets? All the images?" He's like, "We got movie posters and we got these images. Everything was web size, 100 kilobytes. We're talking like 200 pixels wide."
Oh man.
And so like you can't put that, no matter how you scale it up, guys. You can't. That's like dropping.
Yeah, that's not gonna work. Yeah.
That's like dropping a dime in a ball pit.
Yeah.
And being like, "There's my dime."
What
I
if
had
you-
to make movie fan in about 24 hours from scratch. I had to get all the assets. I my way around it was I had a 3D program, so I typed all the assets, all the names of the logos for the sections of the magazine in 3D and rendered them out really quick and put them in there just to give it a different look from GameFan.
Mhm.
And I remember when that came out, ex-GameFan people and NeoGaf were just like, "In this 3D text, ha ha ha," you know. He learned. Looks like their graphic designer learned how to make 3D text. Ha ha ha. You know, it's just that first issue was just a comedy of like a giant comedy of errors.
They dropped that after issue 2, but they did keep the content on movies as well as anime and DVD releases like at play. That second and last issue of Movie Fan also contained one of, if not the last interviews with Satoshi Kon before he died. The magazine would release its first 5 issues on a pretty consistent every other month schedule. And the last issue of the year was in December, so you'd imagine that the next one would be February. Right? Issue 6, August 2011, after an 8-month gap, supposedly caused by problems with advertising revenue, issue 6 would release with a completely new editing team. I mean, at least things should be back on track. Issue 7, December 2011. Following a 3-month gap, this one was apparently put together by only 3 people. Dave, Rob Duenas, and James Bacon, the managing editor at GameFan. Following this, Duenas would leave the magazine and explain why on a DeviantArt post. Too much work, really. 20 hours a day for 2 weeks straight and I'm still short cover art. It's just too much for me to handle. I'd rather draw and paint than lay out mags. They need a dedicated graphic design person who can handle quick stuff. I'm really an illustrator first. Bacon would also leave shortly after. In April of 2012, GameFan released a press statement that said that they wanted to, quote, increase their online presence. For the first time, they would create a YouTube, a Tumblr blog, a Twitter, and a Facebook account. They didn't even have a Facebook for the business. Issue 8, July 2012. 6 months after the previous, Issue 8 would be released digital only. A contributor named Wesley Rucher would leave the magazine, stating on Twitter that the job, quote, lacked the necessities to keep food in my belly and a roof over my head. Issue 9, February 2013. A 7-month drought would be ended with Issue 9, another digital-only release and supposedly put together by just 2 people, Dave and another staffer named Greg Orlando. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24! 24 months! Issue 10, February 2015. After a 2-year hibernation, GameFan was back with a brand new design and layout, speculated to be easier to put together. 3 months later, on May 6th, GameFan announced a partnership with Destructoid. So now the back half of the magazine would include Destructoid-written content? That's right, content you could already find for free on the internet, you could now wait to pay for in print. Woohoo! Let's see, here was the other half of the book. One does not save the universe without fashionable haircuts and matching pants. Project Runway the game? Nah, the new Final Fantasy looks... That's terrible. According to the announcement, this partnership would finally let them publish on a monthly schedule. So, 4 months later, issue 11, June 2015. The 11th and final issue of GameFan would release to no fanfare. And then it was gone. Vanished. Not even an announcement. The website now links to crypto. That was it. GameFan died. Not with a bang, but an uncharacteristic whimper. There are far too many people and threads that pass through Dave's madhouse to talk about every single one, but we can go over some of the highlights. Tim Lindquist would go on to have a flourishing career in publication, starting not only PS Extreme, but also Double Jump Strategy Guides and Hardcore Gamer Magazine, which actually still exists today, albeit as a meager web presence. He transitioned this into a job at Sony doing documentation and is now the Senior Technical Project Manager at PlayStation's US branch. Terry Wolfinger has found success working in multiple realms of entertainment, including being a storyboard artist for the music video to Michael Jackson's Ghosts and in the makeup department for Terminator 3. He currently works as a freelance artist and you should check him out. His stuff is cool. Eric Christopher Milonis would continue to work in the print industry writing strategy guides for Prima. He would also lend his graphic design talent to design a few gaming t-shirts, including the Gamergate t-shirt. He would unfortunately pass in 2018 for reasons that have been left private by his family. Nick Tavares has had a successful career branching off into strategy guides, localization, graphic design, and journalism. He also apparently won a contest to design the poster for the Resident Evil movie? Okay. George Weising has bounced all around production and design roles since GameFan, including working at Santa Monica Studios, and has been serving as director of Sony's external developer XDev for almost 20 years. It's hard to track down exactly what Andrew Cockburn has been up to in the last few decades, but suffice to say he's not dropping LSD in the coffee pot anymore. He shows up to the forum under the username Jesus is God and explains why he was so crazy back in the day. His dad took his own life when he was only 2, and Dave became a weird sort of father figure to him. He describes his influence as making him, quote, such an evil person who only thought about getting money for weed, sex, and more sex. After a tumultuous relationship with an ex-wife, he had, at least at the time around 2004, settled down with a new woman he describes as the perfect match. She loves Jesus, video games, animals, food, people, family, computers, web design, traveling, and me. Never marry just for one out of the 3 possible connections, the physical. You need at least 2 out of the 3 for it to work. Mental, physical, or spiritual. Shidoshi would take the name Molly Patterson sometime during the late 2000s or early 2010s. She's worked as a director and senior editor at EGM Media for over a decade now, and has started several podcasts focusing on gaming and Japanese entertainment. Morning, a huge podcast started in 2010, features her alongside Nick Tavares and Casey Lowe. Lowe, for his part, went into strategy guides following his time at GameFan. He's now a translator for games and manga. Jay Puryear went straight to the games industry and is now the director of brand development at Treyarch Studios. Ryan Lockhart would also have an industry career, being on the design team for 2019's Modern Warfare. After GameFan Online, Kevin DeZalmes would work as an editor in the TV and film industry for several years before leaving the business and going into realty. The DieHard GameFan website reboot that had nothing to do with the magazine is still around, but it's more of an archive if anything. There hasn't been a new post since 2018, and it appears to be folded into something called Inside Pulse, which has a separate gaming section, which is active. I don't know what's going on here. Rob Duenas left GameFan to have a continued career as a graphic designer and illustrator. You might have enjoyed his character designs for Crash Bandicoot 4. Dave Bergstein only ever saw GameFan as a small piece of his business. He has a checkered history, but let's just say that in 2016 he was arrested and found guilty of defrauding investors for over $26 million and is currently serving an 8-year prison sentence. See you in 2 years, Dave. Oh, and speaking of Dave, whatever happened to the Dave? Well, after GameFan shuttered its doors, he just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. He hasn't tweeted since 2015, the social media accounts for GF have been inactive, and he doesn't even have a LinkedIn. In the end, the magazine just couldn't pull in the advertising numbers to continue existing. It was an indie publication in a rough economy, especially for print, that served a niche audience. Dave Halverson is undoubtedly a mixed character. I've done an extensive amount of research, reading, and listening over the course of the last few months just to track his exploits, and I don't even know if I could say anything concrete about him. He certainly did some bad things. He lied, scammed people, he wasn't a great manager, and could be a bit of a pervert, but at the same time, so many people who worked with him caveat their stories with something about his dedication and how fun it was to work for him, even if they were getting screwed.
The meeting went really nice. I mean, Dave is never, I don't know, like, Dave gets so much flack, dude, but when you hang out with Dave, you're like, that was fun. Cool guy.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's when Dave needs to cut a paycheck, you're like, I don't like Dave. You know?
This is what I've read. This is what I've heard, yeah.
I find this quote from that VentureBeat interview fascinating. He says that the way GameFan was taken from us has always haunted me. That doesn't sound like someone who was just in it to make money. When I read his writing and his public addresses, I don't hear PR speak. Maybe he's just really good at seeming honest, but I don't know. And that's kind of the point. A forum post by Shidoshi reads, "Here's my thing. I look back through my life at who I was, the things that I've done and the mistakes I've made. As I've gotten older, I've changed. I've mellowed on a lot of things, and I'm not the same person that I used to be. Did Dave do some things that I thought were really screwed up back when we both worked at GameFan? Absolutely. But I also did some damn stupid stuff myself. I also know how easy it is to form an opinion on somebody based on pieces of information gained from here or there. There are so many opinions floating around about me that it's crazy. I look at what's been said about me, look at all the misconceptions various people have about me, and it forces me to rethink the way I look at other people. Was he a hack? A passionate journalist? Was he paid off, or did he just have no taste? Was he a furry? A con artist? A father and husband? A trailblazer? Bigot? Artist? Is he even alive? Whatever he is, and whatever he was, I don't think anyone would say that he wasn't a diehard."
Slap! Here comes a daredevil! Game